In the 70s, the United States started the war on drugs. What a joke that was. To this day, our government is still trying to wage war on the people bringing in illegal substances into our country. Right now they're fighting a losing battle, as states are passing legislation for marijuana. And it is only a matter of time until it goes legal for all of the US. Some men got rich off the drug trade, either legally with prescription meds, or illegally like myself. To find out more about an entrepreneur such as myself, we have to go back to growing up in the great state of Maryland. My love of aircraft started when I was young, and my father took me to my first air show. Seeing all those planes, both military and civilian, thrilled me. And while other kids fancied being a superhero or an astronaut, my love for flying only grew with the years. My mission in life was to get good grades and apply myself and spend every weekend with my father, as he shared his love of flying with me. He was an instructor and knew how to fly anything with wings, from props to jets and everything in between. My fondest memory was my first flight with him when I was around 5, as he took me up in a glider towed by a friend of his. The sensation of flying without an engine or any other noise other than the wind whistling over the cockpit was exhilarating. Fresh out of high school, I decided to go into the Coast Guard, and with my prior experience, I was assigned to search and rescue. Utilizing a variety of aircraft, from fixed wing prop planes to helicopters, we would go out to rescue fishing vessels in stormy seas. This all happened during the late 70s, as my skills were tested in a variety of environments. From calm and sunny skies to flying during a hailstorm, my piloting skills were pushed to their limits. After getting off a very wet and rainy rescue, as we had to locate some pleasure craft that was stranded at sea, a man was waiting for me inside the hangar. The man was dressed in a white dress shirt, khakis, and wearing a pair of aviator sunglasses, which was odd, as it was night. "I hear you are one of the best pilots in this outfit," he asked gruffly. Answering his question with a nod, he continued on his spiel, like he was a door-to-door salesman trying to sell me whatever crap he wanted to unload on me. "The US government is looking for a few good pilots to help with allies down south. You will be well paid for your services, as well as given your own aircraft." My father used to say, if things sound too good to be true, they usually aren't. "So what's the catch?" was my reply. "Well, you might not be exactly welcome down there, so you might get shot at. Have you ever used a firearm before?" He probably noticed that those words didn't have a good effect on me. "Relax, friend. I have sent a few people down there already, and they haven't had any problems." "So, where is this place that you're sending people?" Smirking as I said this. "Nicaragua." His reply came flat. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This is like that movie that came out a few years ago with Tom Cruise, right? Wrong. First of all, that movie was full of shit, as no one gets that rich without certain people knowing about it. Second, the main character in the movie might have been a TWA pilot. However, he was also ex-military. That's something that they don't tell you, because they felt the need to leave the shit out. My career started in the late 1980s, as they had to get me up to speed on how things were to progress. The idea was to fly low to the ground, land at some nondescript field, drop off the cargo, take on more cargo, and make sure that was ejected before landing back in the States. Notice I am saying cargo because you don't need to know what it was. But let's just say it wasn't anything legal. Most of the time, there wasn't any problem during my trips, and that was a good thing. One of the weirdest things that was dropped off for these guys was porn magazines. It was just odd to see people go rabbit over something you could buy at the corner store. The first few months of flying cargo went off without a hitch, as everything was progressing fairly well. True to Mr. Sunglass's word, money started to roll in. And thank God a good friend of mine was working in Wall Street. His name is Sal, and he has to be one of the savviest investors in the market today, telling me what to buy, where to put my money, etc. People would tell me that this was done for money or the love of my country. However, I did this for one reason only. Because flying was in my blood. And of course, Mr. Sunglasses was right again, as for the most part, I didn't get shot at. Sure, there were times guns were pointed at me. However, it would get cleared up as some higher-up would come and defuse the situation. One of the higher-ups who befriended me was a man that we will call Jose, and this was the conversation that happened before one of my last runs into South America. Hola amigo, ¿cómo estás? This greasy official reached out a handshake as his stained fatigues strained to hold his bulk. A green cap managed to contain his strands of dirty hair, and to my surprise, his boots had been polished to a mirror sheen. Bien, Jose, what do you have for me today? I asked as he fired off in rapid Spanish as a bunch of soldiers began to unload my plane. Wandering over to a small tent, he pointed to a map of the area. There's an airfield here, and our forces have been under attack by a local tribe. We are only taking half of the guns and ammo, and we want you to run there, drop off the guns, and come back here to refuel and take your cargo across the border. Local tribes? Jose clapped me on the back so hard, it pushed me forward. Relax, mi amigo. These are simple folk who do not understand our plight. We had only sent in 20 men, as we thought they wouldn't be an issue. We had gotten a radio transmission a few hours ago, stating they were under attack, and that's when the line cut out. What do you mean cut out? Jose chuckled. Reception in that part of the region is spotty at best, and they are a local tribe. They only have spears and knives, so you should be fine. Now, hurry along. The quicker you get there, the quicker you can come back here and drop off your next load. He turned away from me to bark orders at his soldiers as they scattered like cockroaches when the lights came on. Climbing back into my plane, I sorted through the guns that were available, as there was an assortment of handguns, assault rifles, and a few shotguns. Picking out a well-used M1911 that had seen its share of combat, as well as an FN-FAL that looked just as used. I set out towards the remote airstrip. The sun was starting to set, and a prayer was uttered to whomever was listening that the strip would have been lit. Fortunately for me, there were a set of lights illuminating the runway, but it looked like a rectangle of light flanked by all sides by a sea of darkness. Managing to land on that strip was nothing short of a miracle, as this was the reason I only flew day missions. My Piper PA-30 Twin Comanche rolled to a stop almost at the end of the runway, and there was a camp set up at the end of it. Trusting my gut and turning the plane around would aid me if everything went tits up. Leaving the engines running might have been a rookie mistake, however. But I would rather deal with that than get shot at by some trigger-happy guerrillas. Tucking the 1911 into the waistband of my pants and holding the FN-FAL, part of me wanted to chuckle, as this felt like being in my own action movie. A few campfires illuminated the surrounding area, pushing back the darkness all the way to the tree line. Past that, there was a void that no light could escape, as the thrumming of the engines was the only sound for miles. Approaching the camp with my rifle raised, part of me could hear action music off in the distance. However, when I reached the camp, part of me knew this wouldn't be an action movie. It would be a horror film. The makeshift camp was in shambles, as there were bullet casings, blood, and bodies that seemed to have parts of them torn off by something razor sharp. Growing up, I had gone and seen horror movies before, and the sight of blood, even my own, never really sickened me. However, that was not on the same scale as this carnage, as my earlier meals came back up to spatter on the blood-soaked earth. My rifle trembled in my hands, walking through this carnage to see if anything had survived the attack. Nothing had. Hola, ¿estás aquí? My voice echoed through the jungle. However, the only thing that replied were the nightly sounds. The only tribe for miles around were the Maris tribe, who to my knowledge keep themselves hidden from the outside world. Exploring the camp revealed more bodies and ruined equipment, as the shortwave radio was smashed. No, not smashed. There were 3 marks gouged deep into the metal, like something clawed at this. This was starting to scare me even more as I ran from the tent back to my plane. But halfway between the plane and the camp, for whatever reason, I looked back. To this day, I regret doing so. In one of the trees that bordered the camp, crouched high and looking as if to strike, was a jaguar. Its features were barely illuminated, as the shadow obscured some of the details as it leapt down. Once it hit the ground, the firelight gave more details to the creature. The muscles could be made out under its spotted pelt, as its eyes seemed to bore into my soul. What happened next was something out of a nightmare. As this beast stood on his own two legs, this creature looked like the offspring between a human and a jaguar, as each one of his arms ended in hands with 4 fingers. Its tail reared up behind it, and clutched in the tip of it was a knife that belonged to one of the soldiers. The jaguar hissed like an angry teapot as it bellowed in a deep roar 2 words that seemed to ring in my ears.
Go now.
Dropping my rifle, I sprinted back to my aircraft, looking over my shoulder to see the creature just standing there. However, there were a few more shapes emerging from the jungle as well, as more than a dozen pair of eyes staring back at me from the darkness. Clambering back into my plane and pushing the throttle all the way full, I managed to pull up before hitting the end of the runway. An hour or so later, my plane touched down back at Jose's airfield as the plane taxied to a stop. A group of soldiers came up to greet me. Stepping out of the plane in a daze, Jose looked at me with a mixture of fear and concern. "What happened, amigo? What of the camp?" "That," was the only thing that I managed to croak before passing out. A few hours later, I woke up in one of the tents as Jose smiled and offered me some breakfast. "Welcome back to the land of the living, gringo. You gave us a bit of a scare." Rubbing the back of my head, I sat up and took the offered tray. Jose sat silent for a few moments, watching me devour some huevos rancheros. "So, what happened last night?" Jose looked at me concerned. At first, I was going to tell him what happened. However, if I did that, he would probably have me committed to some South American mental ward where my last days on Earth would be hell. The story I told him was simple. This Mattis tribe snuck up on the camp and killed everyone in it. Rubbing his chin covered in stubble, he nodded as he wrote off that part of the operation as a total loss. Turning to leave, he told me to get some rest as the cargo would be ready in a few hours. "Jose, one more thing." My muffled reply came around a forkful of eggs. "See? No more night flights. It's too risky." "Si, senor. Get some rest, and we'll come get you when the plane is loaded." Still reeling from the horror show that was the past 12 hours, my mind refused me any rest. Anytime that I even come close to drifting off, images of death, dismemberment, and those jaguars haunted my dreams. As my plane was ready for the trip home, I asked one of the soldiers about the Mattis tribe. "Jaguars," he said in broken English. "They hate that name, but that is what we called them." The rest of the day was spent flying my cargo home, making the appropriate drop, and landing at a nondescript airstrip in some potting town in the Midwest. Taxiing to the hangar, and just like clockwork, Mr. Sunglasses was waiting for me with a padded envelope. "You look like hell." He saw that I had been without sleep. "Yeah, about that. I'm taking a few days off." He started to protest, but my 1,000-yard stare silenced him as he nodded. "You take as long as you need. Just remember, we need to keep those boys supplied." My career was cut short a year later, as some DEA prick almost caused me to crash as his wing clipped mine. More than a few acres of corn were sacrificed in my emergency landing, but I made it out with only a few scrapes and bruises. They tried to run me in for smuggling or whatever bullshit charges they could come up with. They put me in one of those interrogation rooms and was only there for 10 minutes until one of the officers told me I was free to go. Making my way outside, I saw a familiar face leaning up against one of the cop cars parked on the street. Mr. Sunglasses smirked at me as he fished inside his jacket pocket and tossed me a familiar padded envelope. "Here, kid, this is a little something from Uncle Sam to show his appreciation." The envelope was twice as thick as previous ones. As he nodded, See you around, and don't spend it all in one place. With this final payment, along with the other payments that were put in a variety of investments, I decided to retire at the ripe age of 38. A piece of property fell into my lap right on the border between Arizona and Nevada. My house was constructed from the ground up and had more than a few rooms, including an armory, indoor gun range, and even a massive shelter. There are two events that have me considering leaving this state and moving thousands of miles away from here. The first is the news chronicling a variety of sightings of big cats in my general area. Granted, this is a desert and there is a lot of wildlife around here. However, the second event made me consider abandoning my house and getting as far away from here as possible. Coming home from errands, I noticed some sort of dead rat on my stoop. This poor creature looked to be split in two by something really sharp. Next to the rat was something that resembled a paw print dipped in the blood of the dying animal. This paw did not look like any animal I had ever seen before in my life. Because this paw looked like a 4-fingered hand.